I'm going to tell you the 5 traps I've seen first-time land buyers fall into in this last year. Traps that people have cost them real money, from $5,000 to over $70,000. So each one's fixable in about 20 minutes, so stay with me. A buyer almost wired $48,000 to a seller last month for a 5-acre parcel in East Texas. Looked beautiful on the listing, flat, mature pines, 2 miles off of a paved road. He found me 3 days before closing because something didn't feel right and he wanted a second set of eyes. He was smart to pause because I pulled up the parcel on the county GIS, ran the access, and found something the listing agent had not mentioned. The 2 miles off the paved road, there was no recorded easement across the neighboring property to get to it. None. The piece was landlocked. The neighbor he'd have had to drive across had already turned down 2 prior buyers. He wasn't negotiating or selling that easement access. If that buyer had closed, he would have owned 5 acres of trees he could never legally drive to. He would have spent $48,000 to look at this land from a public road. Real quick, I'm Brian Payne with Land Made Easy, a mini mansions company. I buy vacant, inherited land in nearly every state, and I help buyers like you walk into the right parcels with open eyes. I'm not a guru, a guy who closes land deals every week and has watched enough nightmares unfold to know exactly where the trapdoors are. Going back to the East Texas property just for a minute, because it teaches the first trap and it tells you how I think about land deals. The listing said the property was 5 acres, easy access, mature trees, no restrictions. So the buyer, let's call him Marcus, was paying cash. He was a retired Air Force guy, wanted a quiet spot to build a cabin and let his kids just hang out, right? He'd done the right things, paid an inspector, looked at the soil, even drove the property twice. What he didn't do was pull the access history. When I looked, here's what I found. The parcel sits behind a 40-acre tract owned by a family who'd held it since 1971. There was a dirt 2-track running from the road across that tract back to Marcus's lot. So he assumed that was his road, but it wasn't. It was a permissive use, meaning the neighbor lets people use it when they feel like it. There was no recorded easement. Not in the deed, nothing at the county. I called the county clerk myself and then called the company the seller had picked. The title company hadn't flagged it because the title commitment was for the parcel itself, not for the access to the parcel. 2 different things, right? Most buyers don't know that. You need to make sure there's legal access, which is not shown on your property. So we pulled the contract. There was a 10-day inspection contingency, and they were on day 9. Marcus terminated. He got his earnest money back and walked. The seller actually relisted the same lot 2 weeks later, same listing, same trap, waiting for the next buyer. Ridiculous, right? It happens. So here's the number that mattered. Marcus would have lost $48,000 in a purchase price, plus an estimated $12,000 up to $40,000 negotiating with a neighbor for an easement who said they probably wouldn't sell, right? Or worst case, he'd have owned a parcel worth maybe $4,000 now as a landlocked piece. So a net loss of 40-something thousand on a deal that looked clean up front. That's why I call it a trap, right? It's trap number 1, and it's the most common one I see. Here are the 5 traps in total. Write these down, screenshot them, I'll put them in the description, save them, right? So trap number 1, no legal access. The parcel touches a road on the map or there's a dirt path leading to it. Neither of those things mean you legally own the right to drive there. You need a recorded easement on the deed itself, or the parcel needs to actually touch a public maintained road. Ask the title company specifically, is there a recorded legal access to this parcel? So if they pause or they can't produce that, you might have a problem. Trap number 2, the perk test that's on file, right? Seller loves saying the perk test passed, or our neighbors have that. That's great, but 2 questions. When and where on the property, and the perk tests are typically valid up to about 5 years depending on the county. If the test was done in 2019 on a corner lot of the lot, that's not where you want to build, it's worthless. So if you're putting in a septic system, you need a fresh perk test at the actual build site. It's $300 to $1,500 usually, and it's the cheapest insurance policy in buying land. So this is generally done once we are under contract moving towards closing, because you don't want to pay for a perk test unless you control the property. Hopefully that's clear, right? Trap number 3, mineral rights and water rights that were severed decades ago. This one shocks people. So in many states, Texas, Oklahoma, Colorado, parts of New Mexico, even New York, the surface rights and the mineral rights can be owned by completely different people. You can buy 40 acres and not own the oil, gas, water, or even the timber on it. Worse, the mineral rights owner has a legal right to access the surface to extract what's theirs. You could wake up to a drilling rig on your land that you cannot legally stop. So, ask the title company what rights are conveyed with this deed, surface only or the full bundle. Once they give you an answer, weigh what's available against what you want to do with the property. So if oil isn't of interest, great. Maybe you don't need those rights, but maybe you want to do a water well for your new home. Those rights you'll need. Trap 4, wetlands and flood zones the seller didn't know about, or at least say they didn't know about. Pull the FEMA flood map and the National Wetlands map. Both are free. Both are online. Both take 5 minutes. Literally just Google FEMA flood map and put in the address. It's free. It'll save you a lot of headache. If any part of your build area is in a wetland, they can stop you from grading, filling, or building, and they usually don't compromise. So I've seen $80,000 lots become unusable because the seller didn't disclose a half acre of wetland in the back corner. That being said, a lot of properties with flood zoning can be built on. Either there is a high and dry spot, or the city or the county will allow you to add fill so you are above the flood line. That takes an engineer, but you need that clarity going into it either way. Okay, trap 5, last one. Back taxes, liens, and HOA dues hiding in the title, as in the title paperwork, okay? Don't miss this one, okay? Most buyers assume the title company catches everything. They usually do, but you're paying for a title commitment, not the full title policy until closing. So read the commitment yourself. Look for the exceptions section. That's where the surprises live. A 2-year delinquent county tax bill or an unpaid road maintenance assessment can attach to the property after you own it. But a lot of these things are spelled out sometimes in that section on the title report. And so you can ask as many questions about it as you want to the title agent, and I highly recommend it. I'll tell you something most people in this space won't. I've made expensive mistakes too, and more than I'd like to talk about. So early on, I bought a parcel, sight unseen, always sight unseen. Most land buying is done without seeing properties nowadays, but it turned out to have a conservation easement I missed in the recorded documents. So I couldn't build a thing on it. I ate the loss, discounted it, sold it. That's how I learned to read every document, every time, even when the deal is small. I tell you that because the goal of this video is not to scare you, it's to make you patient. Patient is the cheapest tool in land buying, and almost nobody uses it. It doesn't have to be weeks or months either. Patience could look like an extra 24 hours just to get an answer you need. When I work with a buyer, whether you're buying from me or just want a second set of eyes, every closing goes through a licensed title company or closing attorney. Never me. Never a wire that doesn't have title insurance on the other side. If anyone, me, a wholesaler, Facebook Marketplace seller asks you to wire money outside of a closing company, that's your signal to stop and call a different title agent or attorney. I'd rather you lose a deal than be the reason you or someone else got hurt, okay? All right, here's the brand promise I run my business on. If a deal isn't a win for everyone, I don't do it. I don't do the deal. That means if I find one of these 5 traps on a parcel that I'm selling you, I tell you about it before you offer. If I find it on a parcel somebody else is selling and you've asked me to look, I tell you anyway. And you can decide. There's enough good land in this country that nobody, buyer or seller, has to get hurt. There can be creative solutions to get around all 5 of these traps. So we'll tell you those solutions as well. If you're looking at vacant land right now and you want a second set of eyes on the parcel before you sign anything, here's what to do. Go to landdiscounted.com. That's land-discounted.com. I'll put the link in the description as well. Send me your details. We'll get you on our first look VIP list for vetted deals in the state you are looking at. You can also visit our main site, landmadeeasy.com, then hit the contact us to tell me what property you're looking at. I'll run the same access, title, and all the checks that I just walked you through like I do on my own deals, and there'll be no charge for the first parcel. If you'd rather talk to a person, you can call our buyer line, 916-848-2778, all included at the end here. Text or call. Either my senior land advisor or I will answer. If this video saved you from one of these traps, the kindest thing you can do is hit subscribe and leave a comment. Maybe put one question there I should answer in the next buyer video. I love helping you guys out. I read every one of them. I'm Brian. This is Land Made Easy. Be patient out there. The dream property is coming.